Redditors, what was the wildest event that went down at your workplace? So, we were on a work retreat in rural Colorado. We were going to spend the day horseback touring as a team, building exercise for management. Our CEO had a connection to the ranch owner and was the only experienced rider in the group. He mounted after the rest of us, and as he did, the horse bolted. He fell off with one foot stuck in the stirrup. The horse reared up and toppled like it was going to fall on top of him, but the stable master got himself between the CEO and horse and kept it from getting worse. The horse then came down hoof first onto side of CEO's head, snapping his jaw and taking his ear off. So CEO is laying open wound down in the dirt, hay, and horse crap. Ambulance called and rushed him off to Vail for emergency surgery. We all went home late that night to the East Coast. CEO couldn't fly for a few weeks, but ultimately was fine. Best impromptu team building event ever. Next story. Accounting/warehouse department. Last day before Christmas vacation. It's almost 5 p.m. and we all gather at the office. Everyone's excited. My male colleague throws his arms with some sheets of paper in the air, hits female colleague right in the eye with the corner of these papers. Blood everywhere. She's screaming. Panic unfolds. We call an ambulance. She's out of the office for 3 months, sues the company, loses 80% of her vision in her eye, wins the case, and then quits. The guy, he starts therapy. He was holding maybe 20 sheets of printed paper. It totally could have happened to anyone. Next story. Corporate office. I had given my employee a poor annual review because she was a bad employee. Things came to a head a few weeks later. She sent a scathing email to my boss's boss, we'll call him B. She printed this email out and tacked it up outside her cubicle. My buddy and another VP called her out on this and asked her to take it down. She also printed out quotes from The Art of War and tacked those up in her cubicle that week. As for me, I was in my cubicle about 3 cubicles away and voices were getting louder, but I was working with 2 others trying to troubleshoot weird numbers we were seeing, and then I got a nosebleed. At this point, A is yelling at the woman in the cubicle next to her and saying really nasty things. So my buddy and the VP get HR involved, and A is sent home. Then she, A, gets put on paid leave for 2 months. When she wants to come back, we discuss performance expectations with HR and my boss, as well as modified responsibilities. A does not meet the expectations that we lay out. She lasts about a month, and then there is another dust-up in which she is rude and inappropriate to a coworker. I forget the details of that day, but she is sent to HR. We cannot rely on building security at this point because A has befriended the regular guard. She refuses to be sent home. I call my boss, who calls her boss, B. B proceeds to drive out to our office from his C-suite about 20 minutes away, and B takes A into an empty office for about half an hour, and eventually she gets walked out. We never see her again. The next day, the head of our company security drives out to our office to warn me that A is unstable and to make sure I watch myself. I go buy pepper spray and home security system that day. I've never been quite the same since that day in 2016. That is also the day they started paying for an armed security guard in our building. Then, about 3 days later, 2 uniformed police officers are wandering around our office. I'm completely baffled. There's no way that random people should be wandering around our office even if they are cops, but I imagine it's related to A, and I live in the same town I work in, so I go talk to the cops. They then ask if I know where room 313 is, and I show them that rooms aren't numbered like that in our building. They ask if I know where A is being held, and I say none of us have seen her in 3 days. They say they got a report that A was being held against her will in room 313. We really didn't have anything to offer the cops except that maybe someone in HR downstairs knows something, and then the cops leave. About a week later, someone noticed weird expenses charged to his department. When we looked at the invoices, they had a different address than the normal one used for that company, and when we Googled the new address, it was a small, sketchy trucking outfit, not a global company. So we called B. Turns out that during that month that they let A come back to work, she was trying to steal millions of dollars. She wasn't at her own desk because she was in accounts payable, committing fraud. A was then eventually sentenced to a few years in prison. I imagine she's out by now. All because I gave her an accurate performance review that she didn't accept. Next story. Call center. Collections. Shouting matches on the floor, employee to employee, employee to management, employee to upper management, slammed doors, parking lot fights. It was wild. It was the most money I had ever made, and I worked there for 3 years because of it. Next story. Oh man, I worked for a while in a bar/nightclub in the greater East LA Pico area that was also pretty close to South Central and Norfolk, close enough to regularly have a mix of folks from those areas who definitely did not get along. I saw a bunch of wild crap, but there's probably one event that takes the cake. It started when this little maybe 5'1" lady decided to walk up and punch our bouncer in the face. Her boyfriend saw it and started to scream in our bouncer's face. He grabbed the boyfriend to walk him out to the door, and that's when all chaos erupted. When he grabbed the boyfriend, his friends nearby, probably 6 to 7 guys, jumped our bouncer. The rest of the bouncers rushed over to assist, so there's approximately 10 guys in a brawl by the front door, 4 of those being our bouncers. Everything happened quickly after that. The fight got pushed outside and basically all of the customers followed to watch. Our bouncers, they were outnumbered, so every male staff member also rushed out to help. Guys were jumping over the bar, running out from the kitchen. Within a minute, there was probably less than 10 people in the building. Curiosity got the best of me, so I followed and saw a scene I will never forget. Right outside the front door, my female manager and a server had the girl who punched our bouncer pinned down and were taking turns punching/kicking her while screaming, "You think you can act like this in my bar?" Just beyond that, in the parking lot, there was a giant brawl, probably involving 40 people. None of them were involved in the original incident. They just saw fighting and decided to jump in. You could literally see guys watching the spectacle, make eye contact, and then start to fight. Further down the parking lot, a few of our busy boys and bartenders were holding up the boyfriend, while the rest took turns beating the crap out of him. Then, as the cherry on this crap show Sunday, I watched as another one of our managers, who wasn't even at work but was apparently drinking next door, ran across the parking lot and punched this guy with zero hesitation. No questions asked. Homie manager didn't even slow down before just decking him in the face at a full run. Then basically every patrol car in the city and even some from nearby cities were in our parking lot in 5 minutes. Most of the crowd ran for it when they pulled in. More than a few people left in an ambulance. When it was over, our staff members just dusted themselves off, went back to work like nothing happened. Just another day on the job, which was true for them. There had been another brawl like 6 weeks before where a busser got so scared he pulled the fire alarm and they got shut down for 3 days. But also, did I mention this was my 3rd week living in LA? It was at this moment I realized what I had gotten myself into. And that, kids, is why you research an area before picking a spot on the map and moving halfway across the country alone to work there. So I want to say quite a few things about this story. First off, somebody's going to comment 6'7". Okay, I hate you. 69 is cooler. The only people who like 6'7" are the people who haven't experienced 69. You see what I mean? Kids can't have sex. Then, as for the story itself, what an awesome story. People were just fighting for fun. That's real friendship, and a real story is now being able to be told for 40, 50, 60 people. And I don't know why that woman punched the bouncer. And last thing, I've read many stories where people talk about moving somewhere and then are just surprised or baffled or just miserable. And they're like, I moved here and everybody's racist. How could I not see this coming? I don't know. Have you tried Google? Anyway, next story. So, 4th of July. We lived in a dry state where fireworks were illegal to set off. At the company party, my boss had the idea to entertain everyone by using a crane to pick up an old car and drop it from 90 feet into the air onto another car. Well, the quick release latch wasn't working, so a coworker ended up flying the ball himself and cut the rope with a knife. Car came flying down and crashed into another, smashing them together. It was glorious. Next story. A woman came to our offices to see the guy that had just ended their relationship. The guy was ghosting her and reception wasn't allowing her to go inside. She went back to her car and started speeding around the parking lot. Then tried driving up the front steps towards the big glass rotunda entrance. Luckily, the shape of the stairs and the low ground clearance of her red Camaro kept her from making it past midway up the stairs. That didn't stop her though from trying several more times before finally getting it stuck. The police had arrived about that time and took her into custody. Next story. Had a coworker have to write up an accident report for a sister plant and take photos. A male coworker had flipped up a U-shaped toilet seat and proceeded to stand on either side of the bowl and proceed to defecate. One foot slipped and the worker managed to skewer his anus in one of the points of the seat. Proceeded to get 8 stitches in his anus and the coworker had to photo document the accident for a workman's comp report. Next story. story. Just posted about working at a megachurch, and here's another story. Summer of 2001, we had a terribly disagreeable COO who would get in your face and threaten to beat you up or fire you at the drop of a hat. One day as I'm leaving for church, he comes into the parking lot so fast, he's practically on two wheels and one whole side of his truck is riddled with about 8 or so bullet holes. Windows are shot out and I'm standing there with my jaw on the ground. I ask him if he's okay, does he need me to call the police? And he says, "No police, I'm fine." He yells this at me. I come back about an hour later after a trip to Burger King and he's getting perp walked out by the cops. The guy had apparently been a big deal in the drug world in town and had a big buy go wrong and it ended in a firefight. He had exchanged gunfire with some guys who apparently he tried to rob and was apparently running a mega church on the side. He was also so disagreeable because sometimes he needed a bump and couldn't get away or get privacy to do so in the church. Next story. I worked at a hotel. There was a youth boys annual hockey tournament happening in the area. Lots of boys ranging from 10 to 14 years old and lots of parents. Well, one night there was complaints of a couple having sex in the pool with probably 20 preteen boys around. It was concluded that they were just making out intensely, but nonetheless the police were called for public indecency and it was a whole thing. I will never forget the dreaded hockey weekends. Next story. I worked in a call center in my 20s. I was at my desk on a call and suddenly see the top of a couple of people's heads quickly moving to a section of the call center floor, but can't really see who. At first, I thought it was kids that someone brought in. Then all of a sudden, a SWAT team of about 8 to 10 people pop up and start screaming, "Get down, get on the ground!" Turns out someone from our technical department thought they were smart enough to hide the CP they possessed on their computer. They confiscated his computer, and we never saw him again. Next story. Having to try and restrain a huge drunk guy who went nuts in a hotel lobby. He was trying to attack staff. I got him up in a headlock. Coworker was trying to pull him down in a sloppy rear naked choke. It was brief, and he began screaming and crying once it broke up on its own. He sat down, still crying. Cops came, and he was escorted off of property. No one injured, thankfully. As for him, he was blacklisted from the hotel. A week later, he called to reserve a room again. Was puzzled when he was told he's not welcome to stay. You see some crazy crap working in hotels. Next story. Lethal or non-lethal? Let's do both. Okay, both took place at a big city newspaper in the early 1990s. I was night city editor, which means most of the staff are gone. It's me, a reporter, the photo editor, and the copy editors putting the paper to bed. My job was to cover any news that hit between 7 p.m. and 1 a.m. The photo desk is right next to the city desk. The photo editor monitors the police/fire scanner and keeps me informed and dispatches photographers if needed. Photo editor, who had been doing this forever, hears something on the scanner, turns to me and says with no emotion whatsoever, "We got a shooting." "Where?" "Here." Now, printing presses were huge machines in those days, with many people working on them to keep them running. One had shot another over money. I'd never seen so many cops before. The police chief and the mayor show up. Gotta be the easiest way to get in the paper and look responsible that they ever came across. The shooter was sitting down with the gun on the ground when the cops got there. We gave the whole thing a short paragraph in the back of the paper. Worth noting, the newsroom was an old and shabby place. On the carpet was a big dark stain where an editor had bled out from some natural causes 10 years before I got there. Don't ask me what the cause was. Then, for my next one, I got secondhand because it just happened during the day. But it was a room full of reporters and I heard the same story from all of them. So, 2 reporters were having an affair, and wife comes in screaming and looking for the other woman. The husband happened to be in another department when she arrived and vacated the premises with speed. What follows is 30 minutes of the other woman running bent over and hiding behind desks to avoid being seen. She finally dashed into the woman's room and cowered in a stall, standing on the toilet. It took 2 or 3 people another half hour or so to talk the wife into a low enough pitch of rage that she went home. Everyone in the newsroom, including a few other not married to each other couples, were on the side of the wife. I don't recall what, if any, discipline was handed out. Probably none. The other woman, also married for what it's worth, very quickly got a job at another newspaper in another city. And the husband eventually wound up at a PR agency. Next story. Small town in Oklahoma, and I started to work at a poultry hatchery. There was a young married couple there that were cousins. They wanted a baby but were afraid of possible defects. They asked the boss man if he would father it by having sex with the wife. So the next couple of months they were all flirty and touchy-feely. Then she got pregnant. The baby boy ended up looking identical to the husband and not the boss man. Perfectly healthy baby. So we have a story where a woman cheated on her boss with her husband. That's interesting. With her cousin. I don't I don't really know what to say on the matter. It's weird. It's just weird. I don't know. Anyway, next story. Animal clinic. A girl, let's call her Diana, was leaving each week for consistent doctor's appointments. Whatever, none of my business. Her best friend starts telling everyone that the girl got an abortion and has no idea who the father is, and she was pissed. Diana ended up pulling a no-call no-show, and when the manager asked her best friend to call her, she saw that Diana had blocked her. Then everyone realized that she had blocked absolutely everyone, including the doctors. So, a little bit of context, Diana and her best friend had just moved in together in a house like 3 weeks prior to this debacle. Anyways, the best friend gets home after Diana didn't show up and finds every single thing that Diana owned in the house gone. Not a single trace left. The best friend ended up having to sell the house less than a month into moving because she couldn't afford it without Diana. A bit of a dramatic reaction, but at the same time, I'd be equally pissed. Next story. Had to run into the stockroom to grab supplies, opened up the door, and 2 serious-looking guys are sitting in there. I kind of freaked out, asked my supervisor if he knew about them in there, and he said, "Yep, they're waiting for us to close." Half hour later, one of my coworkers was being hauled out in handcuffs. Found out my coworker was selling illegal documents. Apparently, they had been investigating him for 6 months. Last I knew, he was sentenced to federal prison. Next story. Rented stalls at a harness racing training stable. The property owner was around 70 years old at the time, was out training his horse in the cart, came around the second turn on the half-mile track, and his horse balks and jumps towards the infield at full pace. Cart gets tossed sideways, 70-year-old man gets thrown out onto the track. Horse dragging cart keeps going, but is now scared and galloping with other horses out there too. A group of us run after the horse to try to stop him. Another group goes to get the owner, who is conscious and is effing dragging himself off of the track and across the driveway and yard, refusing any assistance. We call emergency though. Ambulance arrives. Old man is still fighting with us, now arguing with EMTs. Finally though, got him into the ambulance. Find out later, he's got a broken back and punctured lung. He sells the horse. Then fast forward 2 years later, his wife passes away. She wasn't home that day because she was at a doctor's appointment being told that she has lung cancer. She knew that it was very possible when she had the biopsy and had friends take her. Never told her husband doctors were even concerned. He tracks down the freaking horse that nearly killed him though, buys him back, and starts training him again for racing. The old man then died a year after I retired from the horsing world. Lung cancer got him. He never told anyone he was ever sick. Horse was sold, ended up being Amished. Recently was told by my mentor for my track days that horse was found in poor condition at a slaughter auction and bought by one of the other owners from back in the day and is living the life as a retired pasture puff. This story was both about the old man and then the horse. The horse is like Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy. This was really the horse's story the whole time, if I'm going to be honest with you. But anyway, next story. So I used to work with a young ex-Marine. He was a little on the small side and his demeanor was more Mr. Rogers than Leatherneck, so to speak. One day, he stepped outside and politely asked a group of teenage skateboarders to quiet down a little, as they were being really loud and interrupting business inside where we were trying to talk with customers. Well, the teens opted to try and jump my coworker and beat him up with their skateboards. Things did not go their way. He beat the piss out of the kids. One of the kids tried spitting blood on my coworker as a last line of defense. It was pretty wild. Next story. Girl had an off-her-meds moment. I came back from lunch and hadn't heard about it yet, and made nonsensical small talk with her while she was washing several knives in the kitchen sink. The tiny receptionist was keeping a close eye on us the whole time. Everything about that was weird. I thought with no further curiosity before going back to my desk. Some coworkers grabbed me and then said, "We gotta get out of here," and then walked me around the block to tell me the story. Apparently, the receptionist was waiting for security to come and escort this girl out of the building. What happened was she kept bursting into people's offices to threaten them about exposing their evil drug use, and then invited a separate bunch of people out to lunch where she proceeded to speed through red lights and crosswalks with them in her car while accusing everyone of various things, almost running over a lot of people and terrifying everyone. Her mom and sister eventually came in to apologize and explain, and I believe some sort of work-from-home scenario was put together. Never saw her again. Next story. Pretty minor compared to a lot of other posts on here, but we had a Secret Santa thing at my workplace about 10 years ago. It was always relatively harmless. You buy some crappy little $10 gift here and a $5 gift there, etc., and then reveal yourself to the other person at the end. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until someone, let's call him Marvin, got involved with the Secret Santa program. Marvin was a pretty cool dude, probably about 30 years old, black, and extremely obese. I'd guess he weighed 550 to 600 pounds. Marvin was also the only black guy guy in the entire department. These details are important. Well, whoever it was that got him for Secret Santa decided that it would be a good idea to give him a gift card to KFC. Now, I would personally love a gift card to KFC. I think KFC is delicious. But let's be real here. Everyone with more than 2 brain cells knows of the stereotype of black people and fried chicken. And it probably wouldn't be a good idea to give a KFC gift card to a black person that you really don't know. And Marvin was pretty pissed when he got the KFC gift card because he thought someone was being racist. Who knows? Maybe they were. All I know is that it was eventually swept under the rug and we never had the Secret Santa program ever again. Oh, and bonus story, same workplace a couple of years later. A woman had reached the end of her rope at this job and decided to go out in the most epic way possible. She sent an email to as many distro groups that she could find, short of basically sending an email to the entire company. Huge company, by the way, 50,000 employees, I bet. And the email said something along the lines of, "I'm sick of working for this effing company, and you can take this job and shove it right up your effing asses. I quit." Next story. It was a normal day. We all took our lunch break. We came back and noticed our coworker wasn't there. His car was in the parking lot, but no one had seen him since we all left for lunch. We went out and found him in his car. He shot himself. I had literally spoken to him as we all walked out the building for lunch, less than an hour before. Nothing was unusual. He was acting normal. He didn't leave a note. He had a beautiful life. His wife and 2 kids were his everything. Young man, 38 years old. He was a war veteran, Iraq, Afghanistan, and we were all so dumbfounded by the situation that no one had a clue what he was battling with. He hid it so well. I think about it every day. Next story. I used to work at a pizza chain. Sizzle Pie, originally from Portland, opened a new location in Reno, and I helped head it up. Their whole thing is punk rock pizza. Pizza is named after musicians or songs, metal/hardcore music, merch with crazy art, vegan and veggie pies, crazy hours. The people that managed the new shop all wore black all the time. And as you can imagine, we hired some really interesting characters. One dude with long hair who wanted to be called Tarzan, another guy who called himself Living Room, who ended up doing heroin in the bathroom and not getting fired somehow. But the absolute worst thing to happen was this. They were open late until something crazy like 2 or 3 in the morning. Then we'd have to clean up. Our delivery driver, a fairly normal middle-aged lady, went to deliver pizzas to the assistant manager of the store who was off that night. She then comes back and something is way off. She's driving the delivery car on a flat tire. She's stumbling around, acting all weird. We sent her home. Noticed an awful smell in the bar area, too. Come to find out, first thing, she crapped herself in the bar. Bartender told me he found it later and had to clean it up. She went to the AM's house. He proceeded to give her alcohol till she was falling down drunk. Then she drove the delivery car back to the restaurant while wasted and got a flat tire at some point along the way. I hope she didn't hit anyone or anything. Never heard about that part afterwards. But she gets fired. AM gets fired. He was best friends with GM and moved to Reno specifically to open the new shop, so this was a big effing deal. And man, that place though, it was an absolute effing crap show. I was leaving for a new job already, and that just sealed the deal for me. Hard not to look back on it and laugh though, especially the lady crapping herself. Next story. I worked at a distribution center. At places like these, they stack pallets of products, in this case grocery foods for Kroger, on racks roughly 5 to 6 stories high. The forklifts used to take those down were called LTOs. You also have pickers who drive around on automated pallet jacks who get stuff on the ground level. Well, one time a picker runs out from under the racks into the next aisle, which is a big no-no, and almost gets ran over. The LTO driving down the aisle had to turn hard to avoid him and ended up on 2 wheels, clipping out a support beam for the racks. This was on the end of the building, and the racks started to lean inward. And if it collapsed, it would domino affect that entire building. Millions of dollars just gone right then and there. Another LTO worker with the biggest balls I had ever seen put his LTO under the clipboard support beam and lifted the forks up to stop it from tipping further, then ran out of the building. Next story. 2 kids fresh from high school managed to land jobs where I work without any experience. One kid just lost it when another guy took a slip sheet of cardboard off of his skid for something else. It wasn't even that big of a deal, but the kid started to fight him. The older dude then beat his ass, then dragged him into a trailer and beat him some more, and both employees were fired. The other kid, he lost his crap when a trucker couldn't get his trailer in the door properly to lock it in. The kid grabbed a hammer from the maintenance shop and walked out there threatening the driver. Kid was fired fired after that incident. It's just juice for F's sake. Why are kids so damn angry? Next story. One company, two separate incidents with two different heads of HR being fired for inappropriate behavior. First one, head of HR was running a town hall, giving out what was known as a fist bump award. Incredibly dumb name, I know. But someone's name was called, and head of HR tried to get them enthused by saying, "Come on, man, pump your fist." "Nah, just kidding. I know that's gay. I mean lame." But funnily enough, that's not what got him fired, though. He actually got fired after he left an employee's drug test results, complete with all identifying info, full name, address, department, on a bench in the gym. Then second, head of HR decided a casino night was a great idea for a Christmas party, proceeded to get schlammered, groped numerous male employees, and tried to drag them into a rented photo booth and make out with them. When they cleared her office, they found a box of at least 10 open bottles of alcohol. Impressive considering she was all of 5 feet tall. Next story. I was a young carpenter apprentice. Our sister site, condo building beside us, was doing a concrete pour. Their concrete boom truck hit the power lines and put the truck and operator on fire. It stunk and the truck tires were exploding. The next week, they had a concrete elevator form blow out, and about a month later, the foreman, a friend of mine, accidentally blew his head off with a handgun that he had recently purchased and had handled carelessly. Ironically, he was about to retire, as he was about to marry a young woman whose father owned one of the Tokyo subway train companies. I wish I was bullcrapping. This happened in 1992 in Vancouver, BC. Next story. I used to sit in a cubicle where I could see folks coming in and out of the office. One morning, I heard a flurry of activity and looked up to see a mob of guys in blue windbreakers flooding the tiny reception area, then filing back out into the elevator lobby. It was as if they were leaving. I noticed big white letters on the back of those jackets, though. FBI. Turns out the person in the cubicle next to me was removed from the building on charges related to CP. They even took the work computer for investigation. I don't know the outcome, but damn, that was a truly WTF day. Next story. Woman got really drunk and ran around chasing a small person trying to pick him up at the holiday party. Okay, she's banned. The next year, I go up to the bar. She's there, somehow super intoxicated. I say hello, and she's telling me she's going to scratch my face off, so I leave. Then later that night, she starts yelling at our president about wanting a raise or bonuses or something, and then throws a punch. Now, that is crazy, but what's crazier is the other woman jumps in front of the punch to protect this guy. So the real crazy drunk lady hits this other woman in the face, but the president is protected. Anyway, drunk lady is fired. Okay, I feel like some of us want to know. The woman who took the punch, did she get the raise and the bonus instead because she earned it? If the boss is a horrible guy and nobody likes him and he's like a curmudgeon, then you know what? Maybe he should have deserved to be punched. But if he's kind of firm but lenient and generous, I hope she got that raise instead. Next story. I have a couple. I work in a health food store with a supplement department that has many high-dollar items. There were a few years where we had really bad theft, mostly shoplifting rings. As for me, I had just started managing the department and was never really aware of it or what to even look for. An older couple had apparently come in 3 separate times in one day and stole over $5,000 retail from us. I didn't even notice until I saw an older lady with a man carrying a huge purse that looked stuffed. I didn't try to stop them, but I thought that was odd. I looked around, and sure enough, there was so much product missing. Naturally, I freaked out and told my boss, and he was very unhappy with me. I learned pretty quickly what to look for. The next day, I just had a bad feeling, and I had my eyes peeled for these two. I had to take a break, so I told my immediate supervisor to watch for them. She literally stayed in the department and walked right by them. They stole even more. I was so mad. My boss made me cry the day before, and then he made my supervisor cry that day. He was so mad about how bad it made us feel, so he jumped in his car and sped to the next store that he thought they were going to hit. And he hid behind a very sweet demo representative who was sampling products at that location. And sure enough, they walked in the door. He watched them stuffing their bag and attempted to tackle them. They tried to flee, and the dude stabbed my boss and pepper sprayed him. He came back a while later with his eyes all swelling up. We felt so bad, but no one told him to do that crap. He did get fired a few weeks later. Then, not too much before that, but a coworker had someone she knew, maybe a relative, come into the store and acted like he was shopping so he could make his way into the break room. One of my coworkers would just throw his truck keys into a locker without locking them up and then go to work. She must have seen him do this several times. This guy looked suspicious to me, but I just thought he was weird, and I kept on. He finally made his way to the break room to steal the keys and the truck. Oh, and I totally forgot. One time, a girl in our company's work shirt and scanner came in and went to the break room to steal stuff out of our lockers. A coworker asked what she was doing, and she said inventory. Okay, in the break room? My boss at the time saw her and was like, "Who are you?" and took the scanner and shooed her out of the store. But she had stolen money already. Nobody ever said they knew who she was. But anyway, lock yo crap up and don't chase shoplifters. Next story. I worked at a pawn shop over 24 years ago. While working there, the manager that hired me was fired for sleeping with the assistant. They then hired a stripper who would do dances on the counters for customers. The stripper then quit. Another guy was hired but didn't last long. You see, us had run over his ex-wife's boyfriend who was attempting to punch him as the ex-coworker drove away. Then the final straw was we got robbed at gunpoint, made to lie face down on the ground with guns pointed at our heads while they stole jewelry and money. Next story. Medical clinic. Another doctor was renting some office space and didn't pay his rent for several months. He was evicted and all of his stuff was piled up inside by the back door. He came in and threw a fit, and the cops had to be called to remove him. And later, he came back in with signs and was picketing the office and telling patients to not go in. Cops then had to be called again to remove him. Then, another time, a news crew was waiting in their truck for someone at the same plaza. The on-air news person came in and asked us to use the bathroom and blew up the waiting room bathroom. Every time I see him on air, I think of that day. Next story. When I was working at AutoZone, I was on lunch break. I was chilling, eating, and watching YouTube, and my boss and coworkers were assembling this giant shelf. On this shelf, we had everything from brake pads to steering wheel covers. It was towards the end of my lunch that we all hear a snap from one of the shelves that they had just put up. It started to fall over like how dominoes do. My boss caught the end of it, but she only slowed it down. Me, I was in shock of what was happening like a deer in headlights, but snapped out of it and held onto it to help her get out. My coworkers also got a hold of it, and we all counted to 3 and ran for our lives as every car part known to man fell and shattered every which way. But yeah, thankfully, no one got hurt. Not a lot of the parts got damaged, but I think some of the more fragile ones did, like air filters and things like that. Next story. This wasn't my workplace, but a client of mine, a big agency maybe 20 years ago. Guy comes into the reception desk and says he has a meeting with a creative director. Gives the name of the creative director. Receptionist calls back, this is before shared calendars were widespread, and says a gentleman is here to meet with you. Then the guy says, "Oh, he's not expecting me, but I just need a couple of minutes of his time." Creative director apparently shrugs and then comes out. Turns out the guy at the desk is married to a woman that works at the ad agency, and he just found out his wife is two-timing him with creative director. When the CD appears, the guy says, "Hi, my name is John, and you've been screwing my wife," and he charges him and starts throwing punches. My coworker, who saw this whole thing, made like Homer Simpson backing into the bushes and didn't see how it ended, but apparently they managed to end the fight without arresting anyone. Not sure what happened to the guy's wife. Presumably they got divorced. Next story. Telecom company. Morning sales call with a distributed team of 30 to 40 people. Some in conference rooms and some on video. This is pre-Zoom. Cocky sales rep turns down the volume and thinks he's on both video and audio mute. He begins to enjoy some personal time with his video camera capturing everything. Because he's got the volume down, likely watching something else, no one can get this guy's attention to tell him to stop. There was wailing by many people on the call, both in tears and laughter. Folks on the call are trying to get him via text, IM, email, and video chat. Then he finally gets distracted enough from his personal time to pick up the phone, and immediately the screen goes black. The day was ruined for most. Yes, he was fired, and yes, he won a lawsuit. It was settled out of court for his emotional distress and reputational damage due to the technical limitations of the tech. And now you know the story as to, as an industry, why we have auto mute features by personal or company policy as we enter any modern video conference. Next story. I'll keep the details a bit vague here, but my line of work requires being around a bunch of dangerous, heavy machinery. Cranes, boom lifts, scissor lifts, graders, steamrollers. If it's dangerous, we likely have it on our job sites. Anyway, one fine sunny afternoon, and I'm working away, just doing my thing, and I hear a low boom. The ground actually vibrates a bit. My work partner, always work in teams of 2 or 3 on the job sites, my brothers, says something like, "Oh crap," and kind of points around the corner of the building lot that we're on. Then I get the "cut it" hand signal. Not what most of you think it implies here. It's used on job sites to tell the machine operator to turn it off, or in instances like this, immediately stop what you're doing. I turn around and I see a dude full on sprinting down the road with his phone in his hand. Then people in the neighboring buildings start appearing in the parking lot, standing outside. Then I start to wonder what the hell is up. My partner has stopped working and said, "Don't go around the corner. You will see something that you won't be able to unsee." Wise words. And that whole part took maybe like 30 seconds to go down. So walked over to our work van, parked at the far end of the lot, when I began to hear sirens. 3 ambulances, a fire truck, rescue truck, and all sorts of stuff rolls into the lot, with phone guy pointing back that way. It was an industrial accident, when a piece of heavy machinery lost its war with gravity, and yes, someone was injured in a very bad way. Thankfully, it wasn't a fatality, but working around that sort of stuff, you had better have your head in the right place every single second of the day. And definitely always pay full attention to your surroundings. Head screwed on tight, swivel check, lid, hard hat, etc., high-vis, lights, comms, radios, etc. Even one minor mistake is all it takes. Oh, and don't operate a boom lift near HV power lines. That one wasn't us either. If it's any sort of wire, even 110, always assume it's live, even if it's not. Downed wires on a road, it's pretty scary. Different story and different job though. Stay safe out there. Next story. A couple, they got caught in 3 different departments having sex in the store. Each time they were found, they were chased and managed to elude security somehow. First was the baby aisle hidden under the stroller racks. Next was the outdoors supplies, since very few employees ever stick around back there. And finally, they were found and chased out of the hardware department, hidden behind the paint mixing desk. This all happened in a Walmart, because of course it did. They managed to get away before the police made it to the front doors. Next story. Working at Blockbuster. I had requested the day off, but my manager said, "Sorry, this is the launch of the online program and you're our best seller, so I need you there." The day of the launch, she tells me, "We just need 10 to meet our quota for the night. If you can get me 10, you can have the rest of the night off." So I called up a buddy of mine and explained the situation. He comes in wearing a tuxedo with a damn top hat and a cane, goes up to the counter and says, "My good man, I shall like to purchase your new Blockbuster online pass. Pray you can assist me?" Yes, he said it like that, totally hammed it up. I don't remember why, but he kept buying one at a time and looping back around to the back of the line, always coming up with a new line when coming to purchase. "My grandniece has heard tell of a new and exciting product that your company has created, and I simply must gift it for her 12th birthday this coming weekend. Do you perhaps have any in stock?" Stuff like that. I went home after an hour. It was glorious. Everybody, this story is like, that's something I would do. I don't own a top hat, but I would so do that if a friend asked. That sounds awesome. Oh, I love this story so much. What a bro. Anyway, next story. So there are many things. I worked in grocery retail management. A coworker was stabbed multiple times as she unlocked her car after clocking out at night by her soon-to-be ex-husband. He had been distraught after finding out about the affair she was having with a different department head, and she wanted a divorce. The husband, though, he ran from the scene. Well, the wife managed to drag herself inside while bleeding profusely. I wasn't there that night, but my coworker was trained in first aid, and the hospital was down the road. The husband was found dead by taking his own life the next day. I don't think he knew that she'd survive. The wife went on to have a baby with the other guy. Then a regular customer showed up, like he did every day, and had a cardiac episode in the middle of an aisle and died. It took an embarrassingly long time for people to notice as he was in a store-provided motorized scooter/cart. Maybe 30 minutes or longer before people started to notice. I was also not working that day, or I would have handled it differently for sure. The manager on duty, which was a CSM, quietly had the courtesy clerks clear the aisle and block it off using pallets. It was the condiment aisle, so people were absolutely pissed about not being able to get their mayo and ranch and ketchup and mustard. They kept asking and trying to peek around the pallets and literally didn't care if someone died. My coworkers were telling me how disgusted they were with the handling of the situation and the way the customers were acting, let alone the upper management. The store manager also was not answering his phone and had a knack for leaving early. The ambulance showed up and said there was nothing they could do and to wait for the coroner. Hours passed and finally the store manager did show up, and he was at the local watering hole, decently drunk and also waiting for the coroner, who also showed up to do his job. And the store was never closed except for the few minutes when they took him out. The manager then grossly said, "Time to clean up and get back to work." My respect for the manager was gone. The guy's son did write a beautiful obituary and cited us workers in it. That kept him company every day. He was a flirty guy and he really liked me, so it tore me up. I always eat his favorite candy in remembrance. Then, there was a gas leak during construction and the store was shut down. Some panel needed to be accessed through the pharmacy, and the only person that had access was the pharmacist. It took ages to get a hold of him, and he showed up reeking of alcohol and was drunk. But they got to the panel, and I think someone drove him home. Then, 2 employees were caught having sex in a bathroom. The woman was married to a vendor that came into the store frequently. I don't think he knew, but everyone in the store knew. But other than that, it was a lot of back-to-back employees stealing. And if there's one thing for sure, it's if there's a person that spent a lot of their time on the clock trying to catch thieves and it's not their job, they're the thieves. I saw it over and over again. Different people at different times for years. Despite it being policy to let people go when they're stealing, employees act like it's their personal duty to catch them. I remember getting flack for it because I let the thieves go 95% of the time. I didn't care. It didn't affect my paycheck, even though it took years for some and maybe even some higher-ups were allowed to stay, but every single one of those thief-catching people turned out to be thieves themselves. They were offended that people were stealing from them, their own personal stash. That's why they were so offended when other people were stealing. It was wild. I also had a higher-up that was coked out all the time trying to blame me for stealing gift cards. When he did it, he was escorted out in cuffs after my interview. And of course, there was lots of employee drama, but these were the craziest. So everybody, I always try to provide my own personal stories. I don't remember having like super duper crazy stuff. I remember one time a lady walked into our store and she was wearing a dress and she walked in normally, pretend like you're walking, and then she walked out like a cowboy with her legs really spread apart. So I think something was in that dress. I'm just saying she was not walking normally. Also, I remember one time my manager was parked in the parking lot and this guy with his truck backed into his truck, hit his bumper, drove out to see what he hit, and then like yanked my manager's bumper off. And my manager was like, "What the hell? What are you going to do about this?" And the guy was like, "Well, hold on, son. Don't call the insurance people. I'm going to handle this. You see, because I own a car dealership, so I'm going to pay out of pocket. I'm going to give you one of my rentals, and, this ain't going to affect my insurance." And my manager was like, "All right, cool." So that was, if there's anybody to get hit by, I feel like that's the dude. But anyway, folks, thank you all so much for watching, commenting. Have a really good day, and bye-bye.